So, mentioned earlier, Elizabeth Warren, big rally in New York. This rally coincided with, and probably by design, the Working Family Party of New York nationwide endorsed Elizabeth Warren. I don't know how many actual members they have nationwide. It's, in certain states, it's actually like a party that actually fields a ticket. In New York, it's a fusion party, and which is in jeopardy because Andrew Cuomo may be signing legislation to eliminate fusion parties in this state.
He is vindictive.
And I think that is probably part of the reason why Elizabeth Warren got this endorsement. Now, here's the thing that's a little bit sticky in terms of in 2015, the Working Families Party based its presidential endorsement entirely on a membership vote and released the vote results. It was 87% for Bernie. This time, what it did is it did something different, which was we're going to allow the membership to vote. And then we're going to allow the leadership to vote. I don't know how many people constitute the leadership. I think it's somewhere a couple dozen, maybe up to 50 people. The membership could be up to close to 40,000 people. And they weighted those two groups equally. And now, in 2015, obviously, we saw the full data. In 2018 or 19, we're not going to. They're not going to release it. So we don't know. Certainly, it's within the purview, obviously, of a group to endorse whoever they want. It's just a question of how much they're going to be listening to their leadership. There was some controversy about this during, particularly some of the unions. Back in 2015. To a certain extent, there's a greater value for groups like this to endorse early. My understanding, too, is that the Working Families Party is going to want to get involved in outside expenditures, independent expenditures from the campaign. Which involves fundraising and gives them an opportunity in the event that in New York they're shut out to sort of redesign what kind of entity they are. Bernie Sanders does not take independent expenditures, and it does not want those. So there wasn't the same opportunity for Sanders. So there's a lot of administrative reasons why one might do this. It is...
The DSA is doing an independent expenditure campaign for Bernie, though.
I don't, that may be the case, but I don't know to what extent that they're going to be happy with that. But
yeah, no, they didn't ask for it, but we're doing it.
And, but what's a little bit problematic with this endorsement is it's not clear if I don't know. The head of the, Maurice Mitchell was on with Chris Cuomo. Maurice Mitchell is I think the executive director of the Working Families Party. And he was on with Chris Cuomo, and it did not go great. And I think if you listen, it might be clear why.
We have Maurice Mitchell. He's the National Director for the Working Families Party joining me now. Pleasure to see you.
Pleasure, Chris. Thanks for having me.
So, why Warren and not Sanders?
So let me just first say that it's 2019, and we have two structural change, big, bold, progressive candidates that have built huge grassroots followings in the democratic process.
But you picked one. Why?
Right. And so our grassroots members and our volunteers and our state committee, we engaged in a very long process, and we came out. And I'm so proud of the process and so proud that we chose Elizabeth Warren. And let me tell you why. So, I mean, if you look at her, they joke about she has a plan for it, right? But if you look at it and you take a step back, so the Green New Deal, so we could save the planet.
Pause it for 1 second.
Right, go on.
Well, wait a second. Elizabeth Warren does have a climate plan, but Bernie Sanders has specifically signed on to something called the Green New Deal.
May I just say, in this case, the distinction matters. Rewrote the Green New Deal in its most ambitious and comprehensive iteration yet. He didn't just sign on to one.
I mean, you know, they're distinct plans, and one is called the Green New Deal, and one is not. But go ahead.
A historically big picture housing policy. Medicare for all, to take the insurance companies between you and your doctor, right? So healthcare could be a right and not a commodity that's traded.
Bernie
right?
does the same things,
Right.
and he wrote the damn bill.
That's absolutely right, and we have so much respect for Bernie and his followers. And in 2016, we endorsed Bernie. In 2020, you have a field of dozens of candidates, and so we wanted to engage in a process that was deeply democratic, where we could decide early what to do, even as the field was still shaking out. The reason we did it is because that time is one resource that when you lose it, you never could recoup.
Fine. So what was the difference between the two with so much sameness?
So what I could talk about positively is why we endorsed Warren. And again, like I have nothing but positive things to say about Bernie, his followers, and his movement. And I think it's a plus for working people, the people that we represent, that we have two candidates that are advancing this. And I think, you saw the debate stage where they flanked each other, right? And so we want to encourage that with fellow travelers who agree with the policy change in both camps to flank these ideas and to organize. And we encourage other organizations.
I'm with you, but here's why I'm pushing.
Throw in. Please,
here's why I'm pushing.
Let's go.
Because
Let's do it.
no, let's get after it. Here's why.
Yeah.
Because you could argue they're splitting the vote. Okay? And I'm asking you why her and not him when it was him the last time. And when you say why you picked her, I'm not arguing with your reasons. You're allowed to your process. But they check the same boxes.
Well, listen, we did a ranked choice vote. So we didn't
So this was a vote of members.
This was a vote of members and our national committee, which are grassroots activists that are part of people's organizations.
And more voted
labor
for her than him.
institutions. Absolutely.
So that's what it was.
And now we're moving forward with our candidate, and we couldn't be more proud.
So, I mean,
It's like Mission Impossible.
Well, I mean, look, I think there was a way in the event that it is the case that literally more people in their organization voted for Warren, that you start out with that. Cuomo was had to basically walk him all the way there. You start out, well, look, people voted that way. Why did they vote that way? I'm not 100% sure because I can't talk to each one of them. But I can tell you that we're talking about two candidates with blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm just, it is, now there is, I've also seen this reporting. People familiar with the WFP endorsement process say they expected a closer vote, but that Warren and her team had impressed members with organizing muscle that put a premium on engaging members, asking for feedback, and building relationships. I mean, I have heard reporting to the fact that they did a very good job of courting WFP members, that Warren had come out in support of a candidate. I can't remember where it was. Maybe it was in Pennsylvania. And it's quite possible, but they should just release the numbers.
Exactly.
Because they had done it in the past. And that makes it, I mean, at that point, it's like, how do you argue with it? People want, if that's who they want to endorse, that's who they endorse. But it reeks of it being not the democratic process that they're selling. And I think that's the only thing that's problematic about it.
If this is true, I mean, even Warren's side say release the vote that showed that I impressed members with my organizing muscle. It's very simple.
I would just like to add, though, too, I mean, regardless of how this shakes out with the vote, and obviously there would be less to say in terms of their I mean, I think you can have a substantive debate on anything, and the substantive debate I would have is, I mean, Warren just released her health care plan, which Ben Burgess pointed out, in addition to some real remaining ambiguity about the Medicare for All aspect, the language on mental health is distinct from general health and what she put in her own site, which is worth considering. Sanders' plan is comprehensive. And, WFP have said from the beginning, as far as I understand, that single payer is one of their core missions. They also he mentioned housing. There's only one candidate with a homes guarantee. So, even if it is a coherent vote, and that remains to be seen, there's going to be a lot of challenge on the merits because precisely because of what he just did.
I don't know.
I mean, no,
if you've got an
literally, he just
understand.
listed the reasons to support one candidate, which were the policies of the other candidate. It's bizarre.
Well, he could get away with that if the vote simply
if the members voted that way.
Yeah.
Well, no.
And
Well, that's why I said the
like,
substantive debate would still. There's.
But
still
I
a
don't
substantive
know.
debate actually matters, of course. I mean,
But then the debate is like at WFP. If the members voted for Warren, then that makes our conversation about the WFP different, which is that like they're gonna right. But if the members are still like 75%
that's
Bernie,
the difference between a substantive debate and a scandal.
Listen,
it's a scandal. In the first
But I
scenario,
think it could be a scandal.
That's a scandal. If they actually overrode their voters, and it is odd they're being so non-transparent about it, then that's a much deeper problem.
Right.
Either way, it is a problem. Is my point.
I mean, look, I think it's, you could argue on the basis of merits that maybe their argument is like, well, if they all voted that way, there was a reason why they voted, and I imagine they would articulate it. Maybe it is like she did a better good job of like wooing different constituencies within the WFP, and he can go out, Maurice can go out and try and assess why 50,000 people voted a certain way, but that's all he's doing is he's just making some type of broad assessment. But it's hard to get away with that. Like this is not a clip I would have played if it was, they released it and 55% of the people in the WFP total voted for Warren.
I sure would have, and then I would have played it, and then I would have done an intro to a concept called false consciousness, which you like in other contexts, so maybe you should apply it to this one a bit.
Well, I mean, I think
you're all about blaming the electorate. They're not a
but we don't know how much to
electorate.
blame them.
well, that's the point.
Fair enough.
I think we all know.
But we also don't know that this one guy can fully articulate why 50,000 people voted. They could
I don't
have
think
voted.
one person can articulate false consciousness. That's a hard thing.
Whatever.
I think we all know why they're being
We
so
blame
shady
all
about
electorates.
We don't. That's
They
the point.
would have released the numbers if the numbers said that everyone voted overwhelmingly for Warren.
Even if it was 51%.
Even if it was close.
I mean, why couldn't you come out and say, I'm the leader of this organization? They voted 51% for Warren. I feel great about Bernie. I feel great about Warren. This is our membership has spoken. We're going to work our butts off. If Bernie Sanders wins, we're also going to work our butts off. I mean,
what it comes down to is the Working Families Party is much more comfortable in the world of liberal NGOs and in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, which is, a part of the establishment, than they are being the sort of rightward flank of something more left than that. Like
their board
the
was
DSA.
like, if Bernie wins, we won't get cucked by Cuomo as easily.
The DSA works in coalition with them on a lot of things, but this is one area where we're not going to see eye to eye.
I would probably imagine it's less about that type of ideological assessment, and probably in the event that it was the board that overrode their membership, I would argue it's probably more consistent with what we're seeing in North Carolina with those state senators who are willing to vote for a gerrymandered district
that's the
that
point.
maintain the power of Republicans to save their own seats.
Yeah, well,
I think
what
that's
I'm
the point
saying
she was
is not
making.
purely ideological. It also goes back to who's giving them money.
Well, no. I think, like I said,
And
the reporting I have
maintaining
seen
their
is
position.
that in supporting Warren, they can change their operations in a way that give their organization long-term viability, and that opportunity wasn't there with Sanders. And so that is different from an ideological debate, and it's also different in terms of like who is funding him. It's just simply an operational sustainability argument, and that is.
Well, it's both, right? Because it produces an ideological outcome, even if that's not the root cause behind it, right?
Well, yeah, it might. But like I say, like that may not be
endorsing Warren over Sanders is an ideological outcome.
Yes, it is an ideological outcome, but that doesn't necessarily, they may not see the.
We can endorse the candidate of the
I'm less
working
concerned
class.
about the ideological outcome and more about the democratic outcome in this case right now.
I'm concerned about all of it.
Yeah, we should be concerned about all of it. But like, I didn't have that much faith in the Working Families Party to begin with, because I know they're more comfortable in the world of liberal NGOs and in the Democratic Party establishment.
I guess that's why I'm saying I'm more concerned.
I just think that framing of they're more comfortable is naive and silly and does not look at power. It's not a question of comfortability. It's a question, and I'm not being an apologist for them. I'm just saying that analysis, I think, is silly. It's not a question of like, I like these people more.
No, I'm not just saying that they like the vibe.
No, but you're misunderstanding what she's saying. She's saying that, if I understand you correctly, they have carved a market niche for themselves, which goes precisely to what you're just saying. So
I
what
don't
is a
think
word
that's
for
the case.
Yeah.
It's not a case of they've carved a market niche for themselves.
Hold on. Let me complete a thought before you react, so then you can know what you're reacting to. The point...
I'm reacting to carved a niche.
Okay.
I'm suggesting to you they're not carving a niche.
You literally just said it's analogous to the North Carolina example.
Right. It's not a question of them carving a niche for themselves.
That's not a career niche. That's not a place in the marketplace.
It's a question of survivability, which is not necessarily giving you an ability to carve. That they are at the mercy of the unions. The unions basically undercut them in their fight with Cuomo, and because Cuomo had the ability to offer the unions money and transactional benefit.
This does not contradict anything that we've said that you thought you were contradicting. So what's the disagreement?
It's not a question of carving a niche. It's a question of them, a niche that is like their branding. It is simply literally looking for funding.
How they exist. Well, right. Carving a niche for, that's what I'm talking about.
How they continue to
How
function.
do they exist? How do they get funded? Where do they exist in a marketplace? Maybe the niche that they have created in terms of funding, and let's not get tricky and, let's not be pederast about specific words. Maybe where they have created an existence for themselves in a political ecosystem might, in fact, as an example, get uprooted by exactly what you're saying. A Sanders campaign that says, we're less interested in your third-party expenditure. We're less interested in the role as brokers that you might be playing. I mean, come on, man. That's not that complicated.
No, but
you're
looking at it in the opposite. You're looking at it backwards.
No,
that the point is that they
so.
are just looking for, it's like they're looking for daylight, and they only see daylight in one area, and they're not in control of that. Like they don't have the they don't have the ability to create the opportunity.
I'm confused.
They're only seeing what it is.
I don't see how you think you're contradicting what I'm or Jamie are saying, though.
It's not a question of their comfortability. They could be very uncomfortable in this situation.
Okay, they're uncomfortable.
But it's the only place.
All right, let go of that word. We're talking
didn't
about
bring
where
it up.
they've exist. Okay, we were talking
this
about where
seems
they.
like a semantic
Yeah, I
disagreement.
mean it's super semantic. This is where they exist in the marketplace is affecting how they're endorsing. Is not that complicated. And you're literally saying the same thing. Like, come on.
This would all be clear if they release the vote totals, and we could understand how membership voted distinct from the board.
Right.
But you know what? Bernie doesn't need the Working Families Party. All right.
I mean, it would. I mean, obviously, it would help.
Not after I'm done with their brand.
It doesn't. I mean, I don't think it's going to hurt him that much in the end. I think it's going to reflect poorly on them and probably hurt them more.
Yeah, I think it definitely.
The same way endorsing Crowley over AOC did. This is just the next step.
Absolutely.
Their trash brand.
I don't know. I appreciate the work they did with Cynthia Nixon because I think New York is a very different place because of it. I think the IDC. I mean, I think there's value in an organization like that. I think we can see the limits of it, though.
Sure.
I mean, I think it just, it's like it is. I think it does not. It is not an analysis of power and an assessment of like what their value is and the limits on it. Like just sort of, That's all I'm talking about is some level of specificity as to where their limits on their value is, but there's still value. I mean,
that's a separate question.
No.
Wait. I'm sorry. I don't want to be like you here. You don't think that there is? I don't want to be a pederast either. You don't think there's a distinction between saying where they have value, the limits of that run, of how that runs up against broader structural forces versus acknowledging that they might have a limited utility?
Those are the same thing.
They are not the same thing. They are absolutely not the same thing.
The limits of their utility are not the same as the limits of their utility? Is that what you're saying?
I said two separate things.
You said the definition of the limits of their power versus the limits of their utility.
No, I said that in one environment, as an example, Bill de Blasio in 2012, 2013 is a net positive in national politics. In today's context, national politics has completely moved ahead of him. So his value has diminished. The context in which he operates in is significantly diminished. And he can move with that and change or not. Those are definitely different things.
I don't.
This is why I like to keep it to just make the votes public.
Right, exactly. Meanwhile,